But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatterspodcast1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is the three amigos, bizarrely on a Wednesday, but you do like to have this show live, and I couldn't do one live on Friday coming, so here we are. So welcome to George, Mitch, Steve and Joe, and thank you to you guys for making time during your busy weeks to come on, and thanks to everybody in the chat for tuning in. As always, we are here to discuss Newcastle United for just short of a couple of hours. I'll see how the show goes. There's so much to talk about tonight. I don't really want to interrupt it with tweet of the week this week and other things, because we've got a busy program. We won't be getting together for a three amigos until we've played the Villa game. So I'm going to, in the second half of the show, lighten the mood a little bit and have a chat about the lads' views on where we might go this season with the current squad. Obviously, the transfer window doesn't close until September. We'll get their predictions, much like I did with the fans forum on Monday. And also look ahead to the Villa game. So that's the plan today. That's the plan tonight. Looking forward to the show as always. We'll try to get a few questions in as well if we can. And don't forget, I've stuck the link for the fans in. You've got till the 31st of August to subscribe to that. I've stuck the link at the top of the chat. We've had so many emails. Thank you so much for emailing in, because it opens up a new dimension really for the channel, because people don't have to stick to 240 characters on Twitter. They don't have to inbox the lads, and I mean the lads do get a lot of inboxes on social media, and I know they respond to all of you and get back to you, but it doesn't get a chance to be read out unless the lads send me it. And so a lot of you are using the email address, which is great, and it's nice for you to send over stuff. So thank you for doing that. Please keep doing it. There is the email address at the bottom. Kevin Marin is one such person. He says, Steve, amigos, professionals, whichever show you can read it out on. Great shows, lads. Sorry I don't get time to watch them all. He says, on Isak, as Toon fans, we should always be behind Newcastle and forget the goings-on of individual players, as it just feeds the negative press narrative. If they stay or go, in Eddie Howe and our owners, I'm confident we can ride any storm, and losing a player here and there should be expected until we are an established force, which won't be for a while due to the bias and corruption of the Premier League rule changes, so-called Big Three, Liverpool, Man U and Arsenal, and UK press. As fans, we should accept it's going to be an uphill battle to get there. On FFP, for me, it's quite simple. The teams that finish top get to spend the least money in the transfer window, and the teams that finish lowest and newly promoted get to spend the most, providing that they have the funds to do so. However, you never hear of any of the pundits mention this, as it would remove the dominance of the so-called bigger teams over time. That said, this would have to be introduced by UEFA, otherwise the Premier League teams would fall behind European teams. What would this allow? All supporters to dream, all teams to eventually be able to win the cups and leagues across the UK and Europe, and agent and player wages spiralling. The additional funds that would now be available due to this change could be used to drive down ticket prices and improve ground infrastructure, or put on free transport to home or away games. How refreshing this would be. Happy supporters with hope in their hearts that this year could maybe be their year to lift a trophy or win a league. That will be, in my humble opinion, be much better than the current state where 3 or 4 teams win everything and where most fans' dreams are a hope of avoiding relegation. Maybe I'm just a dreamer. Maybe it's time for all football fans to stand together and demand a change from the football regulators to protect our beautiful game. Kind regards, Kevin in Canada. Kevin, thank you for your email. Very, very good. Thanks for that as well. Ian Robson, I will read yours out as well. This is quite a long one, so please bear with us. Hi, Steve. Having watched the professional show with Keith and his revelation of the culprits in the removal of Amanda and Mirdad from the club, I am tempted to go further. I suspect many supporters had a fair idea who would have been the principal conspirators behind the scheme, and it came as no surprise when the identities of 2 senior executives were revealed. Keith's opinion, I have to say, by the way, Ian. We know the coup deprived Eddie Howe of his 2 key supporters, and the situation was further exacerbated with the arrival of Paul Mitchell, who immediately questioned and criticised the transfer policy that had secured some astute signings and world-class players, upsetting Eddie in the process. So having secured their power base, was there a second part of this conspiracy? That being to go even further, undermine Eddie and replace him with Pochettino. At the beginning of last season, you've got Eales and Mitchell, both confessed and keen admirers of the latter. And did these 2, possibly aided and abetted by Silverstone, perhaps set out to achieve that? They would have had a cosy little clique then running the club. It's an opinion. So how far to get Eddie out? How about no silence for a start? In the first few weeks, we had a very unhappy manager. There's no doubt he felt isolated, and if results go the wrong way, whose feet does the blame lie? The manager, coach. Depriving him of much-needed reinforcements adds to the pressure. A run of poor results, and you've got your excuse to remove him. Fortunately, that didn't happen despite a tricky start. Secondly, how about upsetting our world number 1 striker? Refused to honour the promise of a new contract. That certainly did the trick. We had a very lethargic and disinterested Isak at the beginning of the season. Could it be that very scenario happened again after the Carabao Cup final? I bet good money Isak was tapped up by Liverpool then and there. A second refusal of a new contract would explain why he was just treading water for the final few games. Now, of course, we've got the old mess of him downing tools and wanting away. Thankfully, Eddie worked his magic, performed miracles in getting Champions League football and the Carabao Cup. This ensured Yasser Al-Rumayyan's backing, and with Eddie's position now being rock solid and him winning what the media described as the power struggle which saw Mitchell down the road, Eales has now followed. He was ill, Ian, I have to say that. And it's a great shame, in my opinion, Silverstone hasn't joined the exodus. I think a lot of people share that at this present time. Why Eales wasn't replaced immediately last September when his illness was revealed also poses questions. I cannot for the life of me understand why these latter 2 did not move heaven and earth to bring in much-needed income to try and counteract PSR. How could such alleged, vaunted and highly paid senior executives fail to focus on the most fundamental problem facing this club? Where the hell have they been for what is now nearly 4 years? Beggars belief. And as Stu has pointed out on several occasions, even easy options have been ignored. Regretfully, we are now experiencing the cost of that failure as potential targets up for those clubs who offer bigger salaries, as we struggle to reinforce a talented but understrength side. PIF must get the new CEO and DOF appointments exactly right. We cannot afford to appoint another batch of underperformers. Otherwise, we might well be facing a potential exodus of those world-class players who remain as we fall behind those we consider as rivals. So, gentlemen, there's been more jiggery-pokery being going on behind the scenes, or are all these scenarios just an unfortunate coincidence? Cheers, Ian. And Ian, cheers to you, mate. Great email, lovely stuff. And you guys should think about potentially submitting stuff for the fanzine as well if you fancy it next season. George, 2 wonderful emails from 2 respected viewers of ours. Thank you for that. What's your thoughts, mate, on those 2 emails first before we get into what's on today?
Great emails, and thank you for them. They say so much that resonates with how I feel about the whole situation. What I will say, though, is that I'm not ready to jump off the Tyne Bridge yet because of the situation, because of one player. I remember that there's another 24 in the squad who was so well and are still here. and on the evidence of some of the football that we've seen in the friendlies they played, they're still playing good football as well. So I'm not ready to jump off the Tyne bridge yet. But so much of what you say resonates. People will get sick of hearing me saying when people talk about transfers and we should do this, we should do that. My immediate example is to go to Gordon and say, well, because somebody said the other day, well, if you say to them that if you don't do it now, we'll walk away, it never happens. Well, it did happen. Amanda showed it would happen. You know, it was Everton were told it was a price, and that was the price, and that was the end of it. And guess what? Next day, Gordon signed. So there are all sorts of things. The only comeback I've got about Amanda and Maydad is that they made it plain themselves that they were going to leave sooner rather than later for private reasons. So it isn't all about conspiracy. What is apparent, though, is it happened quicker than it needed to. Who really, in Amanda's position, writes a goodbye email at about 3 o'clock in the morning, which is when it hit my inbox, when there was no need. It could have been a much nicer departure than that. So I get the conspiracy theory, but I also worry about the recruitment of various people. I respect Darren Eales and you know, wish him well for his illness, but I've got to say, I shuddered when the first thing I seen about Darren Eales was him standing on a table in the Stack singing the Bladen Races. And my immediate thought was, God, we've got another one. We've just got rid of one of them down the bloody North Road down to London, and we've got another one now. And frankly, as far as everything else about it is, I don't see any evidence of any really major positive inroads for our football club with that guy as chief executive. So I am sorry about his illness, but we're talking about Newcastle United, and that's so precious to me as to many other people. And the other one is that the club obviously use headhunters to bring some of these people in. And the first thing I do when I see a name I'm not familiar with is I go on the net and find out where I can about them, because then most people in these positions aren't difficult to trace. And when they appointed Mitchell, he came with such trumpeting about how good he was and how he'd done here and how he'd done there. But the first thing that hit me was he never stayed anywhere more than 3 years. So he's come into a project which our owners are saying is a 5-year project. And he's never worked anywhere longer than 3 years. That would have set alarm bells ringing for me immediately. And then, of course, hardly in the door, and he's criticising what's gone before, and not just criticising it in a helpful way, not a critical friend way. It was tearing apart root and branch what the previous people had done, and people that had worked solidly for the club. And the evidence for his comments wasn't entirely there, as the two emails have said. We have a string of very talented people who came in as part of that very first window, which some of them, when they were announced, I was scrambling to find out who they were. And yet we've got some superb players on our books, you know, Bruno, Botman, Isak, etc., who, you know, just came in out of nowhere as far as I was concerned. So, you know, yeah, and the end of it is, of course, is that he leaves by mutual consent. Well, anybody who's worked in any business where someone leaves with mutual consent, it usually means because the boss's size 10s placed in a certain place on the posterior. And I can't help but think that was the case. So yes, everything what you both said in those emails resonates with me very, very much. However, I go back to where I started. This is not the end for me in Newcastle United. This is not the end for Newcastle because one player spit his dummy out the pram. There are a good squad who did so well, and I'm still relying on the fact that they'll come again and look as though they're ready to come again. And I'm still hopeful that Eddie will get at least a couple of other players through the door before the window closes. But yeah. Thanks for the emails. It is comforting to know that fans out there are thinking in the way that you are, and not just slagging everything off and saying don't do this and I'm not going to do that and I'm not going to support anymore. Free thinkers are always good for everybody, and those two emails have done me power of good because they resonate with how I feel at the moment.
Okay, good stuff. You listen to what I had to say from our viewers, Neil. Two great emails.
Very much so. It's quite interesting to hear multiple pennies dropping with people around the fan base, and this is, comes back to something we said a while ago about if we discussed everything that came to us on this show, there'd be a queue of people on the high level bridge waiting to jump off, and sales and medication for bipolar conditions would rocket in the northeast. And that's why we try not to be sensationalist, and why we try not to speculate, why we try not to just chuck rumour out. Because I think if we'll probably discuss maybe a tenth of what we hear with good reason. It's not what we're here to do. It's not really our place to sensationalise things. But there's things that are now becoming that you don't need to be Scooby-Doo and the occupants of the mystery machine to work out what's been going on. And people are seeing that now. And it's exceptionally frustrating, that you look at the situation we're in now, which, again, I've said it before, feels ridiculously self-inflicted. If you look at what we're doing with this, looking at players, we've done, as somebody said to me today, we've done more exploring than Bear Grylls. And I wonder who's head of the exploring team. Is it Dora? And if so, what the Spanish for chocolate fireguard is, I also wonder who's in charge of the list of names. Is it Captain Mandarin and Pike? Because that seems to be being spread every bloody way, left, right and centre. And in a way that, names like Tonali and Bruno came out of nowhere. We didn't have a hint. Even Isak. And now everybody seems to know what we're up to. And what's the change there? And what's led that to this situation? Because it's not helping with it. Genuinely doesn't seem to be at all. I think we've tried to flex our muscles in a situation where, yes, we have the things that players want. And yes, we have a trophy in the cabinet. So all the cynical so-and-sos at other clubs, you don't win nothing. Well, we've won more than you recently, mate. The actual record books tell with that. But what we can't do, because of restraints in other ways, is match wages. And the minute somebody comes along who's got that capacity in the wage side of things, that's where the money talks. I'm really disappointed that we haven't more quickly pivoted back to what we were doing, finding players like Bruno and Tonali and Isak who were on the way up, who were malleable, who were ready to go forward, and that Eddie could then help develop. Because it's quite clear that we're A-list, not because of Newcastle United, and not because we can't afford the transfer fees. It seems to be purely because of wages. We're struggling to get that. And so we'll have to have, at very short notice, a real short rethink, and that's really very difficult. And it's frustrating for everyone. I think we're making moves in the right direction at last. Looks like the goalkeeping room's going to be more clear in the next few days. Though if I was Martin Dubravka, I would want to be away 100 miles an hour because they persuaded him to stay, and he played one game after being persuaded to stay. It was terrible, really. I don't think he was treated well at all. The Greek lad was always going to be a make-weight somewhere, and I think he's set to go on loan, which would do him good. He needs game time. You know, Greek international footballer, he needs to be playing somewhere if we're not going to be playing. So all these things, you know, are going on. But again, who's strategizing it? Who's making the final decisions? And where's that going? I see this evening we're linked with John McGinn at Aston Villa. I mean, no disrespect. Combative and, you know, hard-working midfielder. But why let Sean Longstaff go and replace him with him? Because that would be almost like for like, really. For me, that seems like an unusual decision, and it's this distinct lack of direction, and that comes from not having a CEO and not having a sporting director in place. And we've had plenty of time to do something about that.
Is that why do you think we've changed directions, Mitch? Because a lot of people in the chat, you'll see it coming up on the screen that, you know, people feel like we've changed direction.
Yeah, we have, mate. We've tried to go toe-to-toe with the big boys. And we've discovered that the one thing, ultimately, that a lot of those players want, we can't deliver. We can't deliver the wage structure. And we'll have a decision to make now about the players that we've got. We've got an unhappy striker who wants a new contract. Do we trust that if we give him a new contract, he's going to suddenly snap back and be very happy? I'm not convinced. And I think we're in a lose-lose situation with that. My feeling from what I'm hearing inside the camp is the rest of the players are pretty pissed at him as well, which I find that heartening. You know, that the squad core is still there and that mentality is still there. But if the choice is bring in something unproven and risk a wage structure, or do we try and make it work with Isak, we're caught between Scylla and Charybdis, aren't we? We're in that devil may care choppy waters. And it's a crazy decision to make when we don't have a brand new CEO or a brand new sporting director in place who should be the people laying down the law on that. It shouldn't be Eddie, who was very frank with the press, I feel. I think his interview saying you've got to earn the right to train with the group, I think is his biggest statement as I think he's ever made about a player. You think the amount of times we heard stuff about St. Maximum that we could have spilled on here, and we knew the club was covering his arse, when people were doing all sorts and still kissing his arse and saying what a great player he was and this, that and the other, and we're kind of going, hard rolling our eyes, because we knew what he was doing in the background. And the amount of times the club covered his ass. And right now, that's the closest I've ever seen Eddie come to throwing somebody under the bus. And I think that's astounding. And I think that reflects the feeling and the mood inside the camp.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think some of the players were prepared to allow St. Maximum these little foibles and his random trips to Paris and Monaco, with or without the club's permission. But I think on this one, they seem to have said, no, he's down tools and we're not having it. And again, it makes me wonder, how long has he down tools before that, and were they aware of what his mental attitude was towards the end of the season when he just disappeared after the Carabao Cup final? So, you know, we've got so much still to sort out, and I still don't see who's sorting it out. Where's the leadership coming from? It has to be more than Eddie. Sorry, I've gone on a bit.
No, good. Listen, that's what it's about. And these emails have come in, and got another one I'll read out once I've heard Joe's opinion. But Steve, give us your views.
Are we reading the room wrong? Are they reading the room wrong? Quite possibly. When I say they, I mean the football club, when it comes to transfers, who they're identifying and how they're going about it. Is there an experienced talent with the lack of a top levels sporting director with all the contacts? Because the key to it, it's all well and good having the having all the computer software at your fingertips and having the names and phone numbers of agents and top class players, etc., etc. But there's a lot more to it when you make the contact than just making a phone call and saying, is so and so available? I think there's all sorts of work that goes on behind the scenes, and it's not like Newcastle has suddenly just jumped from one to another, because in the past we've heard that we've had a very definite plan at play, and there's something going awry. I suspect they don't know how to pivot at the moment because they've never had to. And when I say they, I mean the people who are left at the football club. The people, the sporting directors team's gone. The CEO is obviously not around, and that leaves a gaping hole. Because who do you report to? Who do you report up to? Who's constantly 24/7 number have you got to really sort of discuss when you're in talks with agents and players? What's your lines of demarcation? What can you say and what can't you say? And I think hidden and wrapped around all of that is an inbuilt fear of PSR and an inbuilt fear of breaking the profit and sustainability rules that are sort of so much of a sanction on a football club of Newcastle's stature and Newcastle's ability at the moment. There was a lot of background noise among the fan base towards Mirdad and Amanda, and accusations were flying, and somebody was letting those accusations grow out in the press that they were to blame for missing out on the profit and sustainability figures, and because that's why Elliot Anderson had to be sold, and that's why Yakuba Minty had to be sold. And I think you're probably looking in that inbuilt sort of shell of protection. Now there's a fear, perhaps, running through the football club. It's a strange one. I thought that the two lads who sent the emails, I thought Kevin and Ian, I thought that they asked some really, really pertinent questions. I think there's a power play that's been occurring inside the football club for quite a long time. That's my opinion. You just get that feeling. When new executives come into football clubs or into any corporation or any business, one of the things that they're very good at is spotting weaknesses, because that's their task. As well as spotting the positives in a company, they also spot the weaknesses, but they're supposed to have the skills and attributes to fix those weaknesses and fix them in a positive way. Because quite often you can't just sack somebody or get rid of somebody because you don't like them or because you feel as though that they're a weak spot. You work with those people, you find out why the situation's occurring, and you do everything you can to work as a team to develop and to iron out those weak areas in their particular area of expertise, and you shape them to what you're looking for. And perhaps that's not what's happened. Perhaps the egos have driven the football club in a certain direction, and you just have to look at the fact that the manner in which Mirdad and Amanda left very, very suddenly, the sudden departure of Mitchell, the sudden announcement of Darren Eales's illness, all of these seem to be spontaneous. They don't seem to have had any plan behind them. There's no thought process certainly no thought process that we've been made aware of. So you can only hope that when we're talking about new chief executives and new sporting directors coming in, that these people have something that perhaps was missing in the skill set of those that they're replacing, and that these people are big enough, strong enough, clever enough, and skilled enough to be able to drive Newcastle United in the direction that Newcastle United goes or needs to go. I suppose the big question is, what's that direction? Because at the moment we're not seeing any positivity in any way, shape, or form that you could really hang your hat on since the end of last season. Obviously, we had this is where it's upsetting, because it's on the back of the most amazing football season that we've ever experienced. And we all had high hopes, and we all said that, you know, this is the explosion, this is it. The rockets are going to go off. The club's going places, and we find that where we've actually been going is down. We've talked about it. You know, we've had the conversation. Is there a conspiracy out there that we're being victimized in some way? We're being manipulated into driving down certain lines, or is it that just profit and sustainability rules have caught up with us? Because they've allowed the whole system, and I don't mean a specific marker in the sand for us that says we can only spend X or Y, but the marker in the sand, it's the one that's way above us, the one that has allowed a club making such a massive loss, so we're led to believe, if you listen to the chief executives, who can go out and spend 250 million, 200 million on players. You look at the situation with Chelsea, where they've just been allowed to drive a coach and horses through rules, and it's all been allowed and it's all been sanctioned. And nobody in their right mind would have thought 2 years ago, yeah, well, you can get around something, just sell something to yourself, you know, sell a pair of socks to yourself and claim the socks cost you 200 million or whatever, you know. That's the way that it seems to have played out. And I think that's the area where this has allowed the big six to just creep ahead. It's as though they've sat down and cogitated over this and decided, you know what, if you can't beat them even more. If you can't hit them over the back of the legs with a stick, hit them over the head with a stick. But we'll do it subtly and we'll do it quietly, and nobody will know that big stick's coming over them. And we're suffering. Everton are going to suffer. We've already seen Everton suffer under the previous owners, but they've got all sorts of plans that they want to put in place with the new ground, and it's probably not going to happen in the manner that they think or hope that it is. Nottingham Forest will struggle. Aston Villa are struggling. We're struggling. There's 4 clubs that you would expect to be in that 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 area if you take out the so-called top 6. Obviously, we broke into it. They were unhappy about it. Villa did it last season. They're getting victimised, and it's all personal. It's just soul destroying. You know, we look at the pedigree of the people that are being sort of touted as the executives who are going to come in. Let's face it, if Wilson comes in from Nottingham Forest, he's had plenty of experience in the transfer market. That's all I can say in the 2 years that he's been working there, because of the turnover of players. And you would hope that somebody like David Hopkinson, and you look at his record, you know, in charge of global partnerships at Real, the CEO and president at Madison Square Garden Sports Company, 23 years at the Maple Leaf Sports in Canada. You know, sound background, sound business, sporting background. What I would say that there's a big difference between being the head of global partnerships, in the same way as that is what Solis does at Newcastle, and actually being on the ground and understanding exactly what it means to be a CEO of a football club in the Premier League. And no disrespect, but the same goes for looking after a sports complex at Madison Square Garden, where you've got a variety of sports, or being in charge at Maple Leaf Sports, which is, again, more a conglomerate of sport and activity than something specific. That's all we are. We are only Newcastle United. The only people we deal with is the Premier League and UEFA. And I think that we've just got to hope that these guys with their skill set can very, very quickly adapt and very, very quickly get us back on the straight and narrow. But it all depends on how they build the personalities, or build into the personalities that we already have at Newcastle United, Steve.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you, Steve. Joe, thoughts on the emails that we've received from people this week?
Can you repeat them again? I wasn't listening. Yeah, I mean, fantastic emails, Steve. And I think, as the lads have said, certainly George had said, you know, it is reflective of how we're all feeling. I talked on the Amigos on Friday about how conflicted I feel, and Steve Hastie's just said there, you know, this is coming off the back of the best season I've ever witnessed. So we should be excited. We actually play football competitively in 10 days' time. And here we are talking about no director of footballs, no CEOs, no plan, no signings, no centre forward. It's an absolute mess. And yes, Mr. Eales, is poorly. We've known Darren Eales was poorly for a long time. He hasn't just become poorly last night. And here we are with X amount of weeks to go with the transfer window. We don't replace him. We knew it wasn't working out with Paul Mitchell, and arguably it was Mitchell going or Howe going is the sense that I get. Eddie Howe's still there and Paul Mitchell isn't. Who's replacing him? Is there an issue with this director of football role? We had the best in the business in Dan Ashworth. His head was turned. We then got the second best in the business, Paul Mitchell. Absolute disaster. Darren Eales came with lots and lots of, kind of kudos on his CV. He was he turned Atalanta around into this all singing, all dancing, fan-based, amazing football team. What have we got? They changed the salt in the 1892, or you get some extra chicken nuggets or something. That's what we've seen, and I feel really, really frustrated. But I also saw Kieran Trippier lift the trophy, so my head's all over the place with it. I get frustrated at the ownership, and I'm not here to have a go at PIF because God knows where we'd be without them. But I get frustrated to the point of, do any of their other multi-million-pound businesses run like this? Does Jamie Rubin's other companies run like this? I don't think they do. I honestly don't think they do. I think there is structure, there's clear reporting lines, there's a plan, there's a vision, and there's people held to account when it doesn't come off. We don't even know if we've got a centre forward to start the game against Aston Villa, and I know we're going to get onto that, Steve. Who's going to be up front for Newcastle? Do we have to rely on Asula, Anthony Gordon? It's a mess. And I think one of the things that's coming home to roost for me is who is currently at that football club who is a football person?
Yeah.
Surely every football club needs a football person. Amanda Staveley was the first to admit with Murdad, they were picking it up as they go along. She'd never owned a football club before. She'd done a bloody good job and fair play to her and things like the Anthony Gordon deal, the tenacity to get that over the line. But I think, she'll be the first to admit she was making it up on the hoof. That says more about testament to her negotiating skills as opposed to her football knowledge and acumen. We haven't got anybody at the club. It's where Mike Ashley fell foul. We had Jimenez and Dennis Wise and all these clowns turned up, signing players off YouTube and all that. We need someone to get a grip of the football operation. Can you blame Alexander Isak for promises that were made? I'd be pretty hacked off if my boss said to me, "Don't worry, mate, we'll sort you." And here I am 18 months later and I'm still waiting and I aren't seeing the company progress. And actually the company's in turmoil. So why would Benjamin Sesko sign for us? Why would Brian and Mbeumo sign for us? Because actually, maybe, just maybe, they feel a little bit like we do. Why would I sign for them? It's a rudderless ship. There's turmoil in the board. There's, how long's Eddie Howe going to last? Eddie Howe walks out of this football club, and I know tongue-in-cheek, my Howe Out campaign will start next week, but there's a... Stop laughing, Steve. Wait, I'm drunk in the strawberry. There's a genuineness. If that guy gets peed off with this, if that guy decides to walk, where do we go next? What do we do? We ain't getting Pochettino because his mate's not in charge anymore. There's a genuine worry. And if Alexander Isak, who was talismanic, scoring goals in cup finals, doing his Geordie accent, and if our main man can walk away and say I'm disillusioned with it, I wonder if our manager can as well. And where do we go? So Yasser Al-Rumayyan, a direct plea like we talked about on Friday. Please stand up. Please be counted. Please put the round pegs in the round holes. Let's get people appointed. Let's get the football club back online, as in the football club, not, who's sponsoring the socks and all that. Silverstone should be marched over the Tyne Bridge and out of town for that. Let the corporate people do the corporate bit. I'm worried about the football inside. So let's get that sorted and let's get this conversation moved on to, do we think we'll beat Aston Villa 2-0? At the minute, I'm not convinced we'll beat anybody 2-0. We need a centre forward and we need one quick. I'm really, really frustrated, Steve. Over to you, Al-Rumayyan. Let's get the people appointed and let's sign some footballers because we need to.
Okay, quick break for this. The day where we ask you to send in photographs of you meeting somebody from Newcastle United, past or present. I got an email from Andrew Young. He says, hope all is good. I'm a huge fan of your channel. I've been watching since the lockdown days. Really enjoy listening to the content each week. My dad also watches and has been to the Dog and Parrot a few times over the years pre-match. His hero growing up was Superman. And there he is, meeting Superman. I tell you what, they would have made a good duo, those two, back in the day, George.
Yeah, definitely. What a centre half he would have made.
No, I was thinking more of a big man, little man up front, knocking it down for
yeah, yeah. Whichever way you look at it, he's tall enough to do anything.
Good stuff. And he did also have a suggestion, Andrew. He says, just an idea for the fans forum, predictions throughout the season. How about you keep a record of all the predictions, and whoever finishes bottom has to buy a gift for whoever finishes first in the predictions table? I can just see Darren there paying out if that happens. I reckon this will get a few more realistic predictions as the season goes on. I'll give it a bit of a thought for the Amigos. Maybe we could do that for the Amigos.
We might buy us another Coke.
He might do, yes, he might do. But great stuff. Thank you for that, Andrew. If you do want to send in your own pictures, meeting somebody from Newcastle, past or present, NUFC Matters 1892 at gmail.com is the address for me to play this music. Okay, good stuff. Thank you for that. Gives us a little bit of a break. News today then. Obviously, Martin Dubravka is currently having a medical down at Burnley. Newcastle's other goalkeeper, Amigos, has been linked with several loans out of the club. So those two goalkeepers will be expected to leave look as if they will in due course. As for Sesko, still no news. And as usual, you would say no news is good news, but at the moment, it's no news seems to be bad news because everyone seems to be predicting he's going to go to Manchester United. How would we all feel, mind, if that doesn't happen? A bizarre scenario where Newcastle have bid more than Manchester United, yet he could end up going there. It's crazy. It really, really is. And as Mitch has already mentioned, McGinn being linked today, Aston Villa's midfielder. Newcastle, of course, as they are looking for players being linked with him. And the other one to touch base about today is Malik Thiaw, or Chow, as Stu Penman likes to pronounce him. God knows what how you pronounce it. But anyway, yes, we are after the Milan. Meow. We are after the centre half from Milan. So let's get the lads' opinions on those. Let's start with Joe, because Joe has to wait usually till last. Joe, we'll come to you first. Give us your feelings on those four players. You know, the players that have been linked. The Sesko situation, the obviously the situation that we've got with the outgoings with the goalkeepers. The link with McGinn and the Malik Thiaw potential transfer. Newcastle interested, chased him before. What's your feelings on that?
We can't afford to let any goalkeepers go. I know that. I think that stands to reason, doesn't it? It'd be interesting to see if it is Martin Dubravka, what fee we get for Martin Dubravka. I wonder what's the market value for Martin Dubravka.
It's going to be one of them undisclosed ones, Joe. Reading Sky today, I don't think we're going to get to know. But anyway, I might be wrong.
It won't be 22 million to Nottingham Forest, I wouldn't have thought. And the Greek lad, he is a Greek international goalkeeper, funnily enough. So, he, as Mitch said, does need some game time. And we've brought Aaron Ramsdale in. So, two kind of England class goalkeepers there if Nick Pope's going to be staying. So, that position's probably covered. It'll be outgoings as opposed to any more incomings, I would have thought. We've said for a while now we need a centre half, and as good as Fabian Schär and Dan Burn clearly have been, they were absolutely flogged. They played pretty much every minute of every game, didn't they? This is a Champions League season, and we saw the impact of having a threadbare squad when we had Champions League games. We've now got additional Champions League games to play because of the change in format. So we certainly like to see a centre-half. I was expecting Jamal Lascelles to be gone, actually, and I've noticed he's still kind of around. Is he in the thoughts? Are we going to have to revert to that? Who knows? We've been linked with Mark Gahey. We've bid for him every day for the last 2 years, allegedly, and he's still sat there at Crystal Palace. So I think we do need a right-sided centre half and a player that I love more than many. Sven Botman is also pivotal to all this because he needs to stay fit, basically. So a fit Botman and another alongside. I think with Theo. He seems to have been on the radar for a while, Steve, and I think that probably says a lot, because a lot of these targets we kind of talk about them. There's suggested interest, and then we don't hear their names again. But he seems to have been around the last 2 or 3 transfer windows. So maybe Steve Nixon, Andy Howe, Eddie Howe, whoever see something in him that's worth us going for. So yes, I'd advocate for a centre half coming in. And the centre forward one, I won't mention any names of people who are we end up signing them, and I have to get behind them. But whether it's Benjamin Sesko, again, he's 22, he's pulling up trees, clearly carted around. I would love somebody to sign for Newcastle United, and a little message to Alexander is he's not our top guy anymore. He's our second most expensive player. There's maybe a little message there, but I said on Friday I'd like to see these guys playing together, not instead of. We still don't know what's happening with Isak. I still think Liverpool will come back, particularly with Darwin Núñez going today. There's more money in their coffers to kind of strengthen their bid if that's what they're going to do. So yeah, we desperately need a centre forward. We needed a centre forward anyway. Callum Wilson's gone, who was our William Asula isn't ready for Premier League or Champions League football. Hopefully he'll get there one day and soon. And I don't think you get the best out of Anthony Gordon when he becomes your makeshift centre forward. So whether it's Johan Wissa, whether it's Benjamin Sesko, or whether there's more targets up the sleeve that we don't know about, because that's been the usual way of doing business. We just kind of go under the radar stealthily and then sign someone. The wishful thinker in me and the optimist in me is hoping that that's what's going to happen. But Eddie Howe talked right at the beginning of the window, didn't he? We need to do business early. We need to get people in, because what we need to do is, blood them into the squad, blood them into the dressing room, get them up to speed with the tactics, the fitness, etc., and get them ready to go for Aston Villa. Whether you can do that in 10 days, I don't know. I really, really hope that Benjamin Sesko and his agent, look at kind of the offers on the table and, surely Champions League football and being the potential number 9 of Newcastle United is better than going to the absolute car crash that's Manchester United. But who knows how these people think, Steve? Fundamentally, it'll come down to who's paying him the most a week. And if that's going to be Manchester United, he ain't coming to Newcastle. So yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, if it's Theo and Sesko, I'll feel a lot better than I do now. But I also think we need 2 or 3 more as well. I don't think this is just about signing 2 players. We need another 3, I think.
The infamous line at the bottom of that tweet. I've just searched it up while Joe was talking. Newcastle have reached full verbal agreement with Malik Thiaw on a contract until 2029. The latest offer stood at 30 million euros. Bayer Leverkusen are monitoring the situation. I mean, it just goes on, doesn't it? As soon as Newcastle go for somebody, somebody else is always linked. But yeah, you've got the name, Steve. What's your thoughts on the latest shambles today?
Well, obviously, fresh off the barbecue at Dorsley Park, you sent us a message saying that Dubravka was going to Burnley and he was having a medical. And I immediately replied to you, was the barbecue that bad? He needs a medical. That sums up Newcastle's situation, doesn't it? McGinn, he's 30-year-old. Now, does that fit Newcastle's profile? Unless that is very, very short term. And I would say, no, it doesn't. Thiaw, been linked with him for 18 months now. on and off. Seemed to be when we played in AC Milan in the Champions League, he seemed to be like the name in the frame. He's the man that we want, blah, blah, blah. That's what we kept hearing in the press, and we were linked with him, whether that was just paper talk or not. But he seemed to suddenly go off the radar, and I think he's form dipped as well. I don't think he was in the best form, and I think he had injury as well. But he's only 23. Now, bringing a 23-year-old in to play alongside Botman, is that the right age? I'm not too sure. Douglas Luiz. Now, there's a player who wants away and is a club is willing to let go on loan because he's at Juve. Barely played last season. Did really well at Villa, but left under a bit of a cloud. It was like as soon as Juventus came in, he wanted away, that type of thing. And I think he suddenly realised the grass isn't greener on the other side. Mad Brazilian as well. Is that what we need in our midfield alongside Bruno and Tonali? We probably do need a player like him. Actually, we do need a kind of, not a destroyer as such, because we've got that in Joe Linton in spades, haven't we? We need someone with a little bit of control who can just sit deep and perhaps at the right time put his foot in and then release the ball. Gooey, again, I mean, this is a year old, and he'll probably go to, now that we've suddenly said we're back in for probably go to Liverpool. Wissa, 29-year-old, I think, Wissa. Does that fit the profile? This has been dragging on for how long now? 6 weeks. If we're that keen on him, why hasn't it been done? Why have we still hanging around saying it's 25 million quid and no more? And you know, every time you go to Brentford, there's another 5 million stuck on the fee. And we're being played. Has the lad done wrong in what he did by doing an Isak, if you like, allegedly going on strike? And then you started to get into the Nicholas Jacksons, which has popped up this week. That's just because Chelsea want them away. But what an inflated valuation, Nicholas Jackson, 80 million quid. And that's purely because that's a valuation that the press and Chelsea have put on him, because he's probably got something like 8 years of a 9-year contract left. So it's just ridiculous. 24-year-old, I think he scored 14 goals in 35 appearances last season. He scored 10 and 30 the season before. You know, we got more out of Jacob Murphy than they managed to get out of Nicholas Jackson last season, and he was playing as the main target man. Then they're talking about what Muniz at Fulham. Well, again, 24-year-old, probably fits the profile purely in age, but 8 goals in 31 games. Is that the prolific striker we need to replace the 25 goals a season man in Alexander Isak? Because I'm wondering where the rest of the goals are going to come from if that's him. And that just leaves poor Calvert-Lewin, who's still hovering around looking for a club. And I look at his record. He played 26 times last season, most of them off the bench. He scored 3 goals. Previous season, he made 32 appearances. He scored 7. Season before that, he only managed 17 appearances and scored twice. Season before that, 17 appearances and managed to score 5. And so you go on, 33 appearances, 16 goals, 36 appearances, 13 goals, 35 appearances, 6 goals. Not the prolific goal scorer that is made out to be. But what he is, he's got 250 games under his belt. He's a target man, and he can bring other players into the game. And is that where we're heading? Are we going to go from Sesko at 75, 80 million pounds to Dominic Calvert-Lewin on a free on the last day of the transfer window? What I would say about Sesko is, and we're talking about our wage structure, we've mentioned it earlier, it's supposed to have offered Sesko £200,000 a week, which is probably not short, really, of what Alexander Isak would be happy to take if we were willing to do it. Now, let's face it, there's no way that they're going into, supposed to have agreed terms with Sesko, and then they've left it up to him to decide between Man United and ourselves. And Man United, who are paying £280,000 a week to Mbeumo, and paying very, very similar to the lad from Wolves that they bought. And you're thinking, well, he's going to be on exactly the same because look at the money there. And you're talking about a team that's paying £350,000 a week to Fernandez, and they're paying roughly the same to Casemiro, and so it goes on. So you're talking, we must have been offering similar wages to the type of wage structure that Man United were putting forward. And yet we can't do that for Alexander Isak. And we've held Alexander Isak out for a year now because, as somebody said, I mean, this is the sort of conflicting sort of media strap, isn't it? 1 minute it's Alexander Isak, suddenly lands this on it. Another reporter saying Alexander Isak and the players knew what he had been promised back in what was it, July, when before Amanda left, he was promised that there would be a wage increase, and it didn't materialise. It got thrown out because when Mitchell came in. So there's been an awful lot going on behind the scenes, and it's all down to wanting a pay rise. That's the only reason. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, I want to win this and I want to win that. And they got no guarantees you're going to win anything anywhere. The only thing you can guarantee in football is what your salary's going to be. Because that's the only thing you agree. You agree your salary when you sign a new contract. The contract doesn't say, and you're going to win the Champions League. It might say you're going to get extra if you do win the Champions League, but there's no guarantees on anything else like that. Ollie Watkins, I saw the name come up there, and I just thought, are they really going to let him go? Is Ollie Watkins really the answer? And I would say on both counts, no. I think we've boxed ourselves into a hole. I think our inexperience, as I said right at the beginning, is beginning to show. I threw a name because I'm like that. I like to just sort of throw names into our little WhatsApp group. And I saw a player that apparently Leeds United were interested in Kasper Dolberg at Anderlecht. And he's just over 2.3 goals a game at Anderlecht, and he's just a young lad. And would we gamble on something like that because he's only 22 million pound? Is that where we really should be setting our hopes and hoping that Eddie can do the business and turn him into an Alexander Isak? And I think there's probably a quandary and a conundrum there that's just driving us all to distraction. And there was, I said it a couple of weeks ago that I was dreading the start of the season. I think I put that on Twitter, and I certainly mentioned it to you guys. But normally we should be excited for that game, 2 weeks on Monday, or a week on Monday against Liverpool, and we're not. We're not excited about it at all. We're going into it with trepidation, and probably because we're thinking, is Isak wearing black and white, or is he wearing red?
Yeah, good point, Steve. Mitch, your feelings on the transfer rumour mill today?
Well, I mean, the Sesko situation continues to baffle me. How can we be in a situation where the club is prepared to accept a lower bid? I've never ever known a club effectively say, hold on, we'll just pause this process because we're getting another bid in, or it's a bit lower, but that's where the player wants to go. I don't think I've ever come across that situation. So I don't understand how we're even allowing that process to drag on. There needs to be some decision and leadership in there that says, hey, enough. You've accepted my bid. We need an answer here. Otherwise, everything moves on.
Is that not just the rub your nose in your face type thing by the Northern Press to Newcastle United?
It might be, but because nobody really 100% knows what's going on. But it's weird.
Yeah,
it's one of the weirdest transfer situations I can think of in my memory. The way we're going about business, so we're like that guy you see on Instagram sometimes with a can of Red Bull. And he just goes up the counter and says 50p and F off and storms out the shop, That's us doing transfer business, isn't it? That's how it feels like anyway. Why so many lowball bids? And that just seems to rub everybody up the wrong way. And it's achieved nothing. And again, seems to have this lack of joined up thinking. Haven't we already been in for Chow in the past and he's rejected it?
I think so, yeah.
So again, why do we keep going back to people who've said no, thank you? You know, Ekatike, the biggest frustration with him was, you know, he'd already pissed off once.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Again, I don't understand it. I don't understand that. Is our list that short? And there's just this seeming, you know, it now genuinely feels like scattergun approach. You know, where names like McGinn cropping up that was as left field as you like. I'm all for sorting the goalkeeping room out. That's one positive, because that, by God, that needed to happen. But again, you ask questions of why they were so desperate to keep Dubravka when we could have let him go quite comfortably in the January window. Wouldn't have affected anything that we did subsequently. And actually, we would have got a bit of money for him that would have gone into the pot. It really doesn't make sense. It shows a lack of coordinated thinking that I was hoping would left behind. You know, I remember the time with the Pardew one, we had about 8 left backs in the squad. You know, that kind of thing was supposed to be something that was going into the past. And the point you make about wages, you're right. Why? Surely that must irk Isaac even more if we're suddenly turned around saying, oh, but we're going to bring somebody else in, we're going to pay him more than you. Wow. That's, you know, that's genuinely another slap in the face. Hello, insult me, injury. And it's all being played out in public, and we're making ourselves look like a right load of knackers. Mm-hmm. It's why we've got, you know, knackers from other clubs in the chat having a little bit dig here, there, and everywhere, all over social media. Some of the football groups me and Stu are on at the minute. Oh, some of that lot are loving it. You know, and that's self-inflicted again. Absolutely self-inflicted again. It really bothers me about decision-making processes. That how is it being done, and who's doing it, and who's in charge of certain things. And like I said before, like somebody said to me earlier today, done more exploring than Bear Grylls, and the time for that should be long over. I think we're really, you know, are paying a price for a little bit of complacency, perhaps.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's frustrating as hell, Steve.
It is. Yeah, George, we've had you on a couple of times already this week, and we'll have you on again for an Ask George at 10 o'clock in the morning. But just give us your views on your thoughts on today's activities, or lack of activities, should I say.
Well, the whole thing is just a shambles. That's the worry. Neil just said it. It just, who's running what for who? And the other frustration for me out of all of this, you've heard us say it before, all of the clubs above who are absolutely taking the mickey out of it at the moment, each and every one of them over £1 billion in debt, including Liverpool. I mean, you know, if Trump was to crash the American economy, God help those football clubs. And, you know, you never might do it. And actually, there was something on the news this afternoon just before I came on here. If you are looking for saviours, well, there's one coming. The Minister of Sport, Lisa Tandy, says the new regulator football will help Sheffield Wednesday save that club and is going to be given retrospective ability to look at the fitness of owners for football clubs. Now, if that doesn't send a shudder up your spine, nothing will, because I can't imagine for 1 minute where the hell that would play out. So in terms of what you're talking about now, The goalkeeping situation, I would have gone for Ramsdale when he left Arsenal, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I was so confident that he was a good fit, and it needs sorted out. I still can't understand what the issues are about Blackademus. Obviously, they see things in training that we've never seen. Because frankly, if you go and have a look at some youth performances for Greece on YouTube or any of the football tubes, he looks very good. In fact, he looks more than very good. So, you know, as I say, they see him and we don't. But it's a situation that needed sorted out. That's great. And my feelings about the Italian centre half are exactly what Neil said. It's that why go back for somebody who a year ago, or even longer than a year ago, said no, thank you. You know, it just beggars belief. I would rather, despite the fact it sticks to me craw a little bit, I would rather we made another inquiry for Guy if we're that desperate. And as regards the centre forward situation, well, it's who you believe said what when. But the important thing is that if as it was promised, and I've got no reason to doubt that that was the case by Amanda, and it was passed on to Mitchell, and Mitchell said, well, you've got a 3-year contract, you're not getting anything. Well, is it any wonder that he's upset? The only thing on top of that is that the timing, he's made most of it, and I suspect Neil's absolutely right. I get the distinct impression that the rest of the squad are furious at what. So you know, I'd rather we went for someone on the way up, like they were, like Isak was, like Bruno was, like Botman was, you know, and being looked at something in the future and take a risk on Eddie producing a diamond out of something raw, because all the other things, the Leipzig guy, I mean, really, he's going to go to Manchester United for more money, yet his club's going to accept less fee. I don't believe that at all, not in the slightest. And if he wants to go to Manchester, well, go to Manchester United. But why aren't we saying? I was led to believe that Leipzig and him were told 48 hours and that's it, no more. Well, the 48 hours is up today. And I don't see any movement. You know, they're still talking about possibly he might come, possibly he might not. Move on. We've got to bite the bullet and move on. The best thing that's happened this week for me was Eddie Howe's statement about earning the shirt, earning the right to train with as Newcastle United player, and all of that. That's the best thing I've heard out the club for a very long time. Otherwise than that, not a Twitter from anybody that means anything. That's the worrying thing. Who's writing the checks? Who's pushing things around behind the scenes? Because from here, from where we're sitting, there isn't anybody. It's just deadly, and it's that needs as much sorted as it does on the field. And having said that, in my opinion, the evidence of the little football we've seen is that the squad's still together. They're still doing the things. So some of the stuff against Spurs the other day was magic. It's the only way I'm going to describe it. And had it happened in a game here in the UK, it would have been all over Sky Sports. But because it's away and against one of the favourites, it doesn't count. So I'm not absolutely flat at the moment, but it is a disaster that we're talking like this after the great season we've had, the high that we've just been on, you know, and you know, watching that guy go up on that stage and talk to the microphone and talk about War Kid. Sod off, War Kid. We've had enough. You know, it's time to call time on the whole situation.
Okay, thanks to everyone. The Charlie Brown teacher thing was at Steve Hasty's end. I've had to mute Steve. I've got no idea what it was, Steve. There was an issue coming from your end when George was talking, and you missed it all because we're looking at your phone. But it was Charlie Brown's teacher, it sounded like. But yeah, so I've muted Steve Hasty. Steve, you might want to go out and come back in. We'll have a quick ad break, and we will be back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com, telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. Okay, welcome back. Just a reminder as well, you can now buy your subscription for the NUFC Matters fanzine next season. 4 issues for £25, and that does include your postage. Get yourself to nufcmatters.co.uk and buy yours today. All proceeds going to Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. The link is in the chat. Click the link, it'll take you straight there. And don't forget, Jules, our moderator in the chat, is running the Football Fantasy League. Invite is here. The code is here, 6EJ7T9 if you'd like to join. And the Super 6 and the pin code for that is P5EU29. I'm sure Jules will repost the links in the chat if you want to join either of those and have a bit of fun with the NUFC Matters crowd this season. If you did miss those codes, just wait till the program finishes and you can rewind the show to there. I do also want to just quickly read out an email from Sheila Little. She says, email from Sheila Little, no relation to Alan Little. Hi, Steve. Can you please thank Mitch for putting my mind at rest on Friday with regards to our chairman and possible sell of the club? It is very much appreciated. I now have the worry of getting signings in. Can you do anything about that, please, Mitch? No. You can imagine my surprise.
Try my best.
So when you can imagine my surprise, though, when my husband and I finally got sat down to watch the show and you announced that my email was written by someone called Alan Little, who'd written it from his wife's account. My husband's face was a picture, especially as my husband's name is Gavin. We don't know Alan Little. He's no relation, but you have confused me before as being his wife last year with regards to the fanzine. Is Alan's wife called Sheila too? Just to clarify, me, Sheila Little, husband, Gavin Little, pets, Romeo, Solo, Rocket, and Amber. Nope, no Alan here. Thank you all again for a brilliant show, Sheila and Gav Little. And as an apology, Sheila, I've resurrected this for 1 week. And the reason being that she says, forgot to pop this on the earlier email today. I've got a couple of Steve Hasties. So Sorry, Steve. I couldn't resist. Below my dog's face when I told her we weren't signing Sesko.
I can hear Patterson's laughing from bloody down in Bishop Auckland or wherever he lives.
There we go. Thank you for
I
that.
just say, Steve, though, if Sheila's interested, just get yourself into Strawberry after the match and you'll probably bump into Alan.
Probably will, yes. Sorry to Alan, sorry to Sheila, sorry to Gavin, sorry to the dog, sorry to everybody for misconstruing that. But there we go. You might be related. It might be like long lost families, this. Okay. We are now going to have a look ahead to the start, well, the season ahead. And as always, Joe has kindly put together a few little montage of for next season and a few odds for next season. So cue the music. Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Stephen. I've missed this. Here we go. Tipster's back. Brilliant. That must mean that there's some football and we can finally talk about what's going on the pitch, which would make a great difference to where we're at currently. What I thought I'd do in light of the fact that we won't be doing a Matters until kind of the balls have been kicked. So
I feel like I've been kicking the balls.
Yeah, I do as well. So the prices for the Premier League for
you pay extra for that.
As we sit, and you do the kicking as well. We've got the prices for the Premier League. So here we go. No surprise at all that Liverpool are the favourites to retain the Premier League title this season. 7-4 to win the league. Arsenal second favourites, 9-4. Man City 3-1. Chelsea 8-1. Manchester United come next at 28-1. So outside of Liverpool, Arsenal, City and Chelsea, none of us have got a chance, according to the bookmakers, 28-1. Newcastle are next favourites on that list at 33-1, and we'd be the first team to do it without the centre forward by the looks. You can bar the rest at 50-1, starting with Tottenham, and then the rest you can forget about. We are 7-4 to finish in the top 4, though, which I thought was interesting. 10-11 to finish in the top 5. And if it all goes wrong, we are 6-1 to finish in the bottom half of the Premier League. So actually, the bookmakers still think, regardless of the transfer window, we're going to have a decent season. So we'll go with them. Relegation, Burnley are the very, very clear favourites to go down. They are seconded by our friends down the road and Leeds United. So again, the bookmakers are playing it safe. The 3 that come up are favourites to go straight back down. We'll see how that goes. Interestingly, Brentford, who've had a bit more of an iffy transfer window than we have, all their crown jewels have gone. They are 3-1, and West Ham United are 6-1 to get relegated. And if you think the wheels are going to well and truly fall off, 200-1 for Newcastle United to get relegated. In terms of the top scorer, Erling Haaland, be interesting to see if he comes firing back this season. He is 11-10 to win the Golden Boot. Mo Salah 9-2, and Alexander Isak third favourite at 6-1. I have a funny feeling that if he turns up in a red shirt, that price will drop instantly. Victor Gyökeres of Arsenal, big things expected of him. He's 7-1. And Hugo Ekitike, if he's going to play for Liverpool, he is 16-1. If anybody's interested, Ipswich are favourites to win the championship. So I'll keep an eye on these prices. I'll keep a hold of these. And as the season goes on, we'll update as to kind of the outright winners. But as we always say, please be careful with your money this season. Gamble responsibly and get your money on Newcastle at 200-1 to get relegated. There you go.
Oh God, I hope not. Okay, let's go with you first, Steve. On your season review, what do you see if the season was kicking off tomorrow and we had a transfer window that was closed now with the squad that we've got, with the people who've gone, people who've come in, Alanga, of course, and Ramsdale, the key signings, but we've lost, Longstaff's gone, Wilson's gone. We'll probably going to lose to Bravka in the next 48 hours as well. Amigos going out on loan. But if we started with this squad, and of course this squad's got Isak in it still. What do you think is going to happen, and where would you think Newcastle would finish? And could we still win a trophy with what we've got?
I think we certainly can win a trophy with what we've got, Steve. I think the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup are definitely on our radar with the squad that we've got. I see no reason to doubt that, because I think we've shown that we've now got an appetite, or at least the squad has. I'm picking up that the vibes within the squad at the moment are still pretty good. You know, that we've got a bubbly character in our captain, in Bruno, who is rallying the troops. Let's forget about the Isak situation, and let's just picture out that midfield of, if they can stay fit, of Bruno, Joe Linton, and Tonali. People coming in, that's a little bit of a worry in terms of if there's an injury there. Have we got any depth? Obviously, Willock out injured at the moment. We've got no idea how serious that is and how long it's going to be. Miley, again, there's various concerns from my perspective with Miley in terms of his overall fitness and ability to see an entire season through, because this could end up being the third season where he didn't perform or appear much last season. Season before was very much a write-off as well for him. So I think it's a big season for Lewis Miley. But I think we've got some really interesting up-and-coming youngsters hovering around the 21s at the moment. We've got some of them who should be maturing by now and should be able to push for places, certainly in the early stages of the Carabao Cup. And some of them are going to be vital because of the lack of numbers that we've got in the squad for the Champions League as well. So I think we're going to see some youngsters like we did last time on the bench. I think we've got the ability to stay there or thereabouts for a top 4, top 5 finish. I don't think we're going to be the pushovers that everybody thinks we're going to be. And it's just a case of knuckling down, keeping that team spirit going. Eddie certainly has the dressing room. There's no doubt about that. I thought our performances, especially the Tottenham's performance, we showed some real sort of bright moments. And I think we'll probably move a little bit further over the weekend to see again some interesting performances coming out of players. We need to score goals, though. That's the important thing. If there was, just to revert back to something that was said earlier about how and being gone next season, there's something called the World Cup happening next season. And I think Howe's position relies very much on how well England do and whether Thomas Tuchel stays at England. If England evaporate and go up in a puff of smoke in America in the World Cup, then that's the press's next big thing, isn't it? That's next summer's story from July onwards. Eddie Howe for England, because they'll be desperate to find something to put the brakes on our sort of what hopefully is another winning season, another cup winning season. So we'll have to go. If we're purely looking at having the squad as it is now, Steve, we have to go in there and be very, very optimistic. Would nice to have had some additions. Ramsdale's a good one, I think, in terms of what he can bring as a challenge. I don't think Dubravka gave much of a challenge to Pope, but I think Ramsdale brings a different dimension. Younger, hungrier, confident, good with his feet, and sounds like a bubbly character around the dressing room. And probably from an age perspective, fits in more with the squad that we've got than perhaps a Dubravka of sort of heading into his mid-30s. So they're all positives. And all I would say on the Vlachodimos situation is, I suspect, given the lack of any opportunity that he's had in the Premier League, that there must be something written there says that some clause immediately gets called in as soon as he plays in the Premier League, because let's face it, there were opportunities last season where they could have played him, and they didn't. So that's the only thing I can say about that goalkeeper. I can't criticise him. As you've said, there's something about him when he played for Greece against England, put in good performance, did okay at Forest. They kind of liked them. And I would hate to think that people were sitting back and going, well, he was crap, that's why we didn't play him, because I don't think he would be or can be classed as that. But no, I'm going to go into it optimistic, given today and Isak's still there.
What position did you say in the league, Steve?
I think we could finish in the top 5. I'm going to go for 4th, but
okay.
I think top 5.
Okay. Neil?
Look, we can certainly challenge where we're at. If you think cups are open season, and actually we've now got a relatively good record in cups over the last few years. We've been to 2 finals. We've got through to quarterfinals. The squad's used to that. And you don't need a 20-goal striker as your pivot in the forward line to progress in cups. You just need to win one game at a time. If we want to look at the bigger picture, though, of the league, can we improve? Yes. Where can we improve? Well, there were 7 home games last season that were either drew or lost, that we had no business drawing or losing, and ended up in the top 5. And so there's something we should be improving on straight away and have the ability to improve on. But that's when we now know that we need that 20-goal-a-season striker. Yeah. Where does that come from? Is it Højlund? Do we take a chance on him? I would be open to that.
But at the moment, I'm talking about if the season started tomorrow, we're going to have to sort this out with Isak. I'm not talking about starting with Asula here. I'm talking about Newcastle will have to rectify the problem.
If Isak is, if we can pull the situation back with Isak, even for one season, and have him interested, I don't want him disinterested, Steve, because we've seen what disinterested Alex Isak does. He might as well not be there.
Yes.
We've seen it with our own eyes. I see people talking about Jackson in the chat. Yes, he was the lad that laid one on Shea. And yes, he got sent off in the World Club Championships because he lost the ball, panicked and 2-footed someone. I actually quite like players with that in them. Because you can mould that. He's young. He's one of those players you might have to accept. Yeah, every now and again he'll do something stupid. But every now and again, when that's channeled in the right direction, you might do something bloody genius. And so I'm open to all of these ideas because, frankly, I want what's best for Newcastle United. I want it to progress. We've got things we need to correct. We need to correct not losing at home to Bournemouth, not losing at home to West Ham and not having a shot on target. And maybe it's having a tetchy, petulant shit up front playing centre forward might be the difference between being able to do that or the ball bouncing off Isak and him looking half-assed and not interested. And so I think where we go with that, yes, there's things to evolve. If we were to go now, right now, with what we've got, of course we'd back it. There's still enough in that squad to upset people if we play to our capacity and follow the plan and stick to the plan. My understanding on Asula is the problem is the playbook. He doesn't understand the playbook enough still, and that he doesn't understand the subtle changes. And he should be doing less TikTok dancing videos and doing more studying of the bloody playbook and understanding what he should be doing in certain situations. Because there's a player in there. We've all seen it. There's a player in there as well. There's somebody we can use. But and you know what? If it's true that the squad are still very much together and collectively pissed at Isak, that might just be we're bloody Leighton Orient moment with this squad. It might just be that line in the sand that suddenly a couple of people tiptoed over and decided, fuck this, we're going to make a stand for Newcastle United. And if you're not with you must be against us, so sort your bloody self out. And so that I'm genuinely quite comfortable with that.
It's probably Lascelles.
Hmm?
It was probably Lascelles.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. You know, we know some of the things he's been involved with players in the past. And to be fair, I wouldn't like a clip off Lascelles. He's another one like bloody Joe Linton. He's built like a bloody cruiserweight. You know, it's not somebody I'd like to take a bloody jab off, let alone a cross or a hook. You know, and so if that's how it needs to be sorted out, that's how it needs to be sorted out. I think the players dealt with all of these issues in interviews when genuinely I'm annoyed that they were kind of thrown to the wolves a little bit in Korea and Singapore. You know, there they are fresh off a plane. You're having to answer questions about Isak.
Yeah.
I think that's the last flipping thing they needed. But it shows that professionalism and their ability to answer those questions without creating more of a problem. Because they could have just totally pulled the pin and chucked the grenade. But none of them did. And I suspect that's because the manager told them not to. And so that gives me a lot of heart going into the season. It's not all doom and gloom. I'm as frustrated as everybody. I'm irritated. I'm irritated because all of this was bloody avoidable.
Yeah.
I'm irritated because it's self-inflicted to a greater or lesser extent. But there's still lots of things to build on from an amazing season last season. There's lots of things. There's lots of green shoots that still need nurtured. There's lots of things that still need tended and allowed to grow and allowed to happen. And so for me, if you still have to go into the season with a degree of optimism, I would just love to see that back up now with some sort of activity in the transfer window that gets everybody else in that same place. Because I understand the angst and I understand the frustration. Because if you didn't think I'm frustrated, by God, you must think I've got bricks in my bloody skull. I'm annoyed. I'm irritated. I think, the whole situation could and should have been dealt with a lot differently. But it doesn't stop us from feeling we still have an ability to upset. And actually, even more reason now to go back to the system and stick it to the man and say, do you want to keep trying to shackle it down? We're going to do it in spite of you.
Okay, great points as always. We'll come to you, Joe, next, and then George.
If you think about it,
I didn't get your prediction where you think would finish, Mitch. Sorry.
Fourth.
Okay, so that's 2 fourths. Joe.
If you think about it, I think what's actually changed. We've got a very unhappy Alexander Isak, but essentially we haven't lost Alexander Isak yet. So there is that point to be made. Yeah, we've lost Callum Wilson, we've lost Sean Longstaff, and we're probably going to lose a goalkeeper or 4. We've brought in Anthony Elanga, we've brought in Aaron Ramsdale. So the team. As long as we can put a smile somehow, and that's the real key to this point, somehow back on Alexander Isak's face, if he's going to stay, then we've got room for optimism, haven't we? Because we've actually added to it. We've still got Sandro Tonali last time I checked. We've still got Sven Botman if he's fit. We've still there's allegedly going to be a resurgent Anthony Gordon. If you listen to what he was talking about his troubles and what's been affecting him, he seems to be refocused. He seems to be up for this season, enjoying his football again. So that's grand. Harvey Barnes is a good player. We've got some good footballers. So in terms of can we still be optimistic, despite everything we've said, kind of last week and certainly this week about the off-field shenanigans, on that pitch, Eddie Howe's still there, Jason Tyndall's still there, so things will continue. We're a good side. We are a good side. We're a Champions League side again, and we're going into the league defending a domestic cup competition. Have we got enough to win the Premier League at the moment? No, we're not that delusional. Could we go close in the Carabao Cup again, or the FA Cup? Yes, but we've got to learn from when we were in the Champions League a couple of years back, because it absolutely knacked us. We were running on empty. And that's why we need strength in numbers. So if the season started tomorrow, Steve, don't forget we've got the Champions League. I'd love to say we'd finish in the top 4. I'm not sure we would, because that is going to affect us as we currently sit here now. If it starts tomorrow, we've got a very unhappy Alexander Isak to sort out. Are we good enough to finish in the top 6? Yes. Top 7, 8, easy. So if it starts tomorrow with Champions League football and an unhappy Isak, Newcastle finish 5th.
Okay, good stuff. Very confident in the chat, George. How about you? What's your feelings?
Well, like everybody else, is frustrated as hell that we come off the back of a great season and looking forward to the next one. But my premise is what it was on Monday night, why I'm not as depressed as some of my colleagues on the fans forum. And that fact is, one player's spit his dummy out. The other 24 in the named squad are still there and still doing their thing. And the evidence for me is that the bits of football we've seen, they're still doing it very well. So there's a good start. If Eddie Howe could persuade, I mean, he's a miracle worker anyway for me. If he can persuade Isak to stay and play like Isak, because it now clear that at least 4 games at the beginning of the season last year, and every game from the end of the Carabao Cup final, he never tried a leg. We threw home games away that we should have won. What did we throw away because he wasn't trying his best? I mean, it just beggars belief. So if Eddie can sort him out and get him to persuade to give 100%, then sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned. We've got quite a few youngsters out who I think could quite nicely warm the bench in Champions League football this time, because the format's different, but in my opinion, the different format suits us, because it brings us against teams of a similar stand from elsewhere that we should be able to pick off without killing everybody. Young Murphy at centre back comes in, and if we're threadbare, then okay. So occasionally we'll have to use Lascelles. Well, he very rarely lets us down when he goes on the pitch. And there are other youngsters coming through. At long last, Harrison, who we got from Manchester City with all the trumpets blown, looks like he's starting to make inroads into things. And there are others that are shining. So there's enough talent there to warm the benches for the cups and for the Europe, even for the European Cup, in my opinion. So I'm as optimistic as ever. And I'd say we can win a trophy. We can win either of the cups, or do well in both, I think, and certainly win one of them. And I'm still confident we'll be in the top 4.
Okay, lots of people in the chat commenting about this, saying that we're a bit deluded, crazy predictions, etc. And people obviously addressing the whole Isak thing. I mean, at the moment, he's still a Newcastle United player. And one would imagine that if the transfer window closed and Isak was still here, Newcastle would have to come up with some kind of solution as to what they were going to do and what he was going to do. The player cannot be disappointed in the fact that Newcastle have tried to go and buy a replacement, but for various reasons they have not been able to bring one in. So for me at the moment, that would mean that we would have to sort this out with Isak, and he would have to come to some agreement with Newcastle. And because let's face it wouldn't be no good for him if the transfer window closes and he hasn't got to move, if he suddenly said, well, I'm not playing. I mean, that's not the way it works. He would have to work it out. Newcastle have actively chased and have actually bid more for Sesko than Manchester United. And if he doesn't come, it hasn't been for the want of trying. So there's a lot of things can happen, but at this moment in time, because we haven't got an Amigos show until after the first game, I'd like to get the lads' predictions as we stand now. What I will do, though, as I've already said, is when the transfer window closes, I'll be asking everybody on the platform what their prediction is for the season moving forward. But I did want to do it prior to the season kicking off. I think Newcastle will be. I think Newcastle, for my opinion, very simple. Sorry, Mitch. My opinion's very simple. I don't think with Champions League we will be able to maintain the same levels that we did last season. We need a bit of luck with the injuries. We need obviously those players who we have signed, a couple of them, to be able to gel and be part of the squad. We need to find, a bit of luck and a bit of rhythm. But I'll still take Newcastle for finishing in a European position. I would say seventh is probably going to be my prediction before the transfer window closes. Go on, Mitch.
You're saying at the end of the transfer window is the realistic time to have this conversation properly.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
Because there's still a lot of speculation and a lot of things that can happen. Eddie said he wanted players in early, and I think that got blown out of the water the minute Mitchell was away. And I think then suddenly we had a very, very different situation and a very different set of parameters, which is frustrating. It's probably utterly undermined a lot of the planning and a lot of the forward thinking. But it is what it is. We've got no control over that. And so, yes, sorry if I'm still a hopeless optimist, a frustrated one and an annoyed one and an irritated one. But there's still so many things to build on our best season in living memory.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know what? There's another trigger within who we buy that we've never really ever discussed, and that's the African Cup of Nations, because that takes place over Christmas and New Year and into the middle of January. And if you get the likes of a Jackson or a Wissa, then there's two players that are definitely going to be away. You look at the rest of the Premier League, you look at the rest of your competition in the Premier League, top end, and they have quite a number of players who are going to be away as well. And Christmas is an important time. You look at our fixtures for picking up points. And that break comes because there's not a winter break as such, but that African Cup of Nations break where you lose players coincides with the end of the first rounds of, or the first period of the Champions League as well. So you're going to lose players a little bit earlier than you imagine, before the 13th of December. And I think the games then take place, and I think it starts on something like the 26th. So, they're going to be getting their squads together early. So I think that's an added little problem that Eddie has, because when he's looking at replacements for Isak and he's looking at for midfielders to come in, he's going to potentially has to avoid those issues. And that's why the likes of a Douglas Luiz could be, especially if he's on a loan from Juventus, could be a very, very useful acquisition for us. Paqueta, another one
worth revisiting. Yeah, because of the ability for him to integrate with the squad very quickly. How well he's Bruno's best mate, and he obviously knows Joe Linton, and I bet he knows a few more of the others by those connections. And I think now might be the time he's got the betting accusations totally cleared, and this is a lad who he needs a fresh start away from West Ham. He's buggered there, and I think the money you'd be talking to spend from it, I just don't see it as a risk at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, not long to go, and now on the show, I'm just going to get your predictions for the Villa. I don't need the dice today, Mitch. It's just off the top of your head. Give us your prediction for Villa.
Villa away.
Yeah, it's the first game of the season.
First game of the season. 1-1 draw.
Okay, George.
1-0 to us.
Steve.
I was going to go 1-1 as well.
And Joe.
Oh God, I was going to say 2-0 Aston Villa.
You said it.
0-0.
0-0. Okay. I'm going to go for a 3-1 to Villa. I don't think Newcastle will win that game. Certainly don't. Yeah, interesting stuff. Keith Downey is busy. He's been very busy the last couple of weeks. Not reporting income, sadly, but Keith Downey has just said that Wissett and Newcastle could be sorted as soon because Brentford are closing in on a replacement striker. So fingers crossed that will be a one that comes in. Let's hope so. 3-0 Isak hat trick, says Ian. I do want to finish with this. Thanks, Jules. She's off. Thank you for everything tonight. I'm going to finish up with an email. I started with one. I'm going to finish with one. This one's from Guy George. He said, "Dear Steve, I love the shows and appreciate the contributions and opinions from everyone. All the talk is about Isak, but he's not the problem. He's the proverbial canary in the coal mine. And it's obvious now in hindsight that he was going to be the first warning sign. Put to one side the self-inflicted leadership problems, which must be put at the door of PIF, who are excellent at many things, but clearly lack football management experience. I'm sure the chairman will sort that out ASAP. It's becoming crystal clear, though, in this window that the core problem is that the business that is Newcastle United can't generate enough income to find the recruitment and retention of Tier 1 players. Make no mistake, if we can pay their wages, the top talent would come. And now that Tonali, Bruno, Gordon and Joe Linton have emerged, it won't be long until their wage demands can't be met and the Sharks at the top clubs smell blood. I'm a huge golf fan, and it's incredible to see what Yasser Al-Rumayyan has achieved in such a short time. He and Greg Norman persuaded some of the world's top golfers to walk away from the lucrative US PGA Tour and join the LIV Tour. Obviously, he paid them huge career-changing amounts of money, and I'm sure that was part of the game plan when he bought Newcastle United. It's hard to see what he can do to get the Newcastle project back on track without busting the PSR restrictions. A new stadium would help, but it's probably too far off to satisfy his desire to win big and soon. I imagine he's had the best legal advice and concluded that as the Premier League have voted for PSR and it applies equally to the member clubs, the legal action may not be successful and is also bad PR for PIF and Saudi. It feels like we'll have to adjust our expectations and accept that for 3 years or so, Newcastle will be a Tier 2 Premier League team who sometimes qualify for the Champions League and win the odd domestic cup. That's far better than we used to, but short of what we were hoping for. I admit I'm worried the PIF will take the view that their goals for NUFC are unachievable and change course by selling the club at a healthy profit and going after one of the big six or a top European Champions League contender, or by investing in something that disrupts the Premier League like they did in golf. They're nothing if not bold. As for now, we should give Isak a big pay rise and sell him next summer. Get a few more through the door this window for Eddie to work his magic on, and hopefully give us another great season. All the best, Guy George. Great email, Guy. Lots of opinions obviously out there. Lots of opinions on this platform all the time. None of them are right. None of them are wrong. We're all Newcastle United fans, and all any of us want is for Newcastle United to be the best that they possibly can.
Can I suggest, Steve, if Chelsea can sell their women's team to themselves, could Newcastle sell their men's team to themselves?
I'm sure if Chelsea did it.
For me, Steve, this revolves around everything. You know, when we talk about what Man United can do, what Liverpool can do, what Man City can do, what Arsenal can do, it revolves around, certainly in terms of Chelsea, Man City, and Liverpool. Not so much Arsenal because they're financed in a slightly different way. It's about having that holding company who can bear all the debt, while the football company runs within PSR parameters. Now, we know from Company's House we have a holding company. So it's obviously something on somebody's mind that they want to structure things in that way. It's a good question. Could the men's team be therefore sold by Newcastle United Football Company Limited to Newco Zebra PLC Limited, and put under that umbrella, but then remain as Newcastle United's first men's team by some arrangement between the two companies? These are the things, and you've got to give it to Chelsea, for example, for being ridiculously good at these accounting games. it's a mess. I mean, look, Everton are about to do that because the minute they said that the girls are going to play at Goodison Park, oh, is that right? That's going to be their home, is it? Well, then that's boosting the value of the women's team because they're a first division team and they've now got their own ground, and so that gets sold
worth a lot more.
Exactly, and so all of these games that go on, it's frustrating. It is for us. The thought is why aren't we being clever with a holding company? Or is it just a case of taking time to get that there because they've all had a jump and a head start on us by a number of years?
Yep.
Because Chelsea's holding company using a holding company goes back to the Abramovich days.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is why there's still a couple of billion resting in an account somewhere, for example. And so I think these are, as mad as that might sound, it's quite an interesting question because if they can sell hotels to themselves, if they can sell women's teams to themselves, what else is possible within that structure? And therefore, how much would be the men's teams worth? Well, $1 billion.
Yeah. Create a world sporting structure that involves all of the Saudi clubs together, and then you sell Newcastle United to that world structure,
to that
value that you think it's worth, which is £2 billion, and then that money gets absorbed back into and trickles back through in the same way. You get the £2 billion, and then let's see what the Premier League would do then. This is the out of the box thinking that should be happening inside with the legals and with various people with the brains, the so-called brains at Newcastle United, as well as chasing everything that Keith said on the show last Sunday on the professionals, chasing all of that to cut the rug from under the feet of those other clubs, but at the same time doing something devious, but within the rules yourself. Go and find the deviousness and go and work on it rather than just sitting there crying. Let's do it. I mean, just a thought that I had earlier in the week, and I thought, you know what? When the time's right, I'll throw it out. And I just thought, no show for a couple of weeks. Let's throw that out.
Go on, George. You wanted to make a point before we finish?
Just the author of the email I talked to on social media, so it's nice to see him putting something on the programme. All I had to what he said was, yes, Al Ramaya got the two golf lots together, but they got head deadlocked. They couldn't solve it. Amanda Neardad solved it in a fortnight, what they couldn't solve in 2 years. So, there's another bit of the story that seems to be very conveniently forgotten.
Great show tonight. Thank you to everybody who has emailed with those wonderful letters and emails and stuff. Great stuff. Fantastic. Thanks everybody in the chat. Thank you to everybody watching. 2,300 of you watching live tonight. Those of you watching on Twitter, please jump onto YouTube, search NUFC Matters, and just hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. Back 10 o'clock in the morning live with Ask George. Looking forward to that. But for now, thanks to Borough Mag, to Steve, to Mitch, and to George. Thanks to you at home. Take care. Good night.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.